Yes. Right.
For a couple weeks.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Melina. I'm sort of a newbie here at Solid Rock. Doug is my husband and I have been attending since January. But I've known Julie for probably
Ever.
5, 6, 7 years, and we started working with refugees about the same time, primarily Congolese, and we just had some wild and wonderful times with our Congolese friends. But I'm so excited that Solid Rock is just jumping in to really participate with getting involved with refugees. When Nanette and Julie and I met, we talked about the importance of sort of a systematic way of doing this. And we started really with donations, and a lot of you may have brought things in, and that was a good way to, just begin week by week, looking at the things that the refugee families will need. And now the donations can continue to come, but now we're in the sort of information education phase. And then from here, a little bit later in the summer, we're looking to really take some action and organize and kind of go from there. So we're lucky tonight to have Mitch. Can you say it, Brashers?
I say Brashers.
Brashers. Okay, so I said it. Mitch is the Community Engagement Coordinator for the International Institute of Southwest Missouri, and he's got a huge list of jobs, and he's trying to give some of them away, but when we first started working with refugees, there were, I think, 2 people. There was Rebecca Thomas, who's the director, and Jadita. What's Jadita's last name? He got it right. And 2 people. Now we have 20.
We had 40 hires of 24.
24 now, and the staff has amazingly grown to meet the needs that have grown, and the influx of refugees, which is also going to only continue to grow. Julie mentioned Sunday that next year we'll be settling 600 around. That's what Rebecca said at the last meeting. So, but I'm going to let him tell the details about what the Institute does and how we can be involved, and then a little bit more about a community sponsorship group, what's involved in that. My husband and I have been involved since fall of 21 with another community sponsorship group that actually has people from several different churches together on it, and we help to welcome at the airport, welcome and settle an Afghan family. There are many Afghan families that have settled in Springfield. And really, our Afghan family now is so independent. I mean, they're just as a matter of a couple of months ago, because we were taking the boys to school every day. We had a whole schedule of school transportation and everything. So our dad's job changed, and he was able to do all the transportation and all the medical appointments, and it's just been amazing. They also had a baby in April, and I watched that little baby come into the world because I was at the hospital with the mom while the dad was home with the 4 boys. I mean, you just never know. I've actually delivered a baby as well, not in a hospital, but in a bedroom, very surprisingly so. So that's another story. If you ever want to hear it, you just never know the surprises that you have. I don't know if all of you are aware, but we have a refugee family that's been attending Solid Rock. They're not hard to spot. They're, I think, the only people of color in the congregation, and they've been sitting toward the back, and their English is just about 0, but they're learning, and we're working on ways to transcribe and translate the service for them. And so please, when you see them, do your best to welcome them. Steve's been great with transportation, and Jane and Mark and Julie, and Jane has a good messenger thread going of people that can help pick them up for church every Sunday. So there are lots of ways to be involved in their lives, and just really think of yourself leaving your home and going to a country, you know, with probably a lot of trauma behind you, going to another country, you don't know the people, the culture, the language. Even when people come here, sorting out junk mail is complicated, you know, because is this meaningful, is it not, you know, what do we do with this? Well, somebody's gonna, my landlord says I can't live here next month or whatever. So a lot of things just need somebody like the Holy Spirit just to come alongside. And just, it's a learning experience for us as well, because I have learned so much from our friends. And just watching their creativity, their perseverance, their love, their, I don't know, just so many things. It's
The impact's amazing.
yeah, it really is just an excellent example to me of how to live in the world, regardless of what kind of comes your way. So enough with me. I'm going to introduce Mitch now and let him take the floor and do your spiel, and then any question and answer, and then we've got plenty of food left over. So please feel free at any time to go get something more. And then, but again, thank you for being here. This means so much. Down the road, I'm hoping that we can have a community sponsorship group, and I'll set up a Google Doc where it would sort of be a hub and all in one place. So those of you that really, after tonight, if you're like, yeah, I could see myself on a team like that, I could see myself on a group, just, it might not be, it just might be one thing here and one thing there, but having a good group of people, we may be even able to take on more than one family, but that's where we go. That's down the road a little bit. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Lois. I appreciate it. Well, as she said, my name is Mitch Brashers. Interestingly, I found out a few years ago that my grandfather, one of 13 siblings, they misspelled his name at the hospital, so there should be an extra A in there for Brashers. So despite the fact that my life is a lie, I've been dealing with that for years. We're gonna press on tonight. So I am the community engagement coordinator, which means I do a variety of things. I do handle, there we go, Culture Fest, which is our cultural festival. See what we did there? We do that once a year. It is the last Saturday of September. That will be the 28th this year. But I organize and coordinate that. That's a real fun festival. We do a lot of front-facing things like this as well. Greeting people, talking to people, doing volunteer recruitment, that type of stuff. So I am a Missourian all the way. I was born in the Boot Hill. I graduated from a little town south of St. Louis. I moved down here to go to MSU back when it had that pesky regional S at the beginning of it. And so my wife came down. My wife was my high school sweetheart. We got married a couple years after we came down here. We built a family here. My daughter just graduated from Kickapoo back in May. So Springfield is my home. And that's what makes it so exciting for me to be able to impact this community. In the 90s, I started working at Springfield Music, and it's now called Ernie Williams Music, but I worked there all the way up until last year. So 25 years, I worked at Springfield Music and then just switched over to the International Institute. So people would say, well, my goodness, Mitch, we thought you were going to be there forever. And I kind of did too. They would say, well, what do you do now? And I would say, well, I'm the community engagement coordinator for the International Institute of Southwest Missouri. And they go, oh, I know all those words individually, but together. You're right. So Mitch working at the music store was pretty clear. I don't think he didn't have an exact idea, but hey, you work in the music store, you probably have an idea of what I do. So what I had to do now was come up with, if someone wants to know what I do, what I came up with was the International Institute of Southwest Missouri is a nonprofit that resettles refugees locally. That's the crux of what we do right there. Now, of course, there's a lot of services that go along with that, but this is the general overall mission of what we are at. And we're going to go through this to give you a little bit more clarity of what we are. So the International Institute of Southwest Missouri is a branch of the International Institute of St. Louis, Missouri. International Institute of St. Louis, Missouri has been around since 1919, right after World War I. It was formed as part of the YWCA to help immigrant women coming in and to integrate into society. As we all know, a lot of wars, men will oftentimes bring back spouses. And so that was after World War I, they were there to help sort of bring that in. They branched off a few years later, so they've been around, as I say, for about a little over 100 years. They have 150 employees. They have their Festival of Nations, which is the big version of, I should say, Culture Fest is a small version of Festival of Nations. Mm-hmm. They bring about 150,000 people in with that every year. So we are growing and growing. We've been around since 2013, 15 employees. You can see this a little bit out. We're right about 25 right now. And then Culture Fest is our secondary, not our secondary, but that's our reflective or mirror sort of festival that we do down here. So we're about a tenth the size, been around about a tenth as long, and we're growing at a crazy pace. A nonprofit, y'all have an idea what a nonprofit is. I'm not necessarily going to go too deep into what a nonprofit is, but for a couple of things of clarity, nonprofit is a business that does not distribute its profits to its owners. We actually love profit. We love all the profit in the world. We just don't give it back to shareholders. We put those back into services. So we are not, a nonprofit is not necessarily someone that doesn't make a profit. It's someone that doesn't give it back into shareholders. One other little thing, nonprofit, an NGO, non-governmental organization, you'll hear those kind of used interchangeably, just for clarification. An NGO usually has its a headquarters in one country and its operations in another country. Doctors Without Borders would be a good example of that. They're an NGO because their services are usually provided in a different country. We are definitely a nonprofit because our services are in our local community, in our local area. So I'm going to skip over resettles and I'm going to talk about refugees for a little bit. So what is a refugee? Your big broad description is this right here. It's a person forced to flee their country because of violence or persecution. Now that is actually encoded in law. It is US law and the 1951 Refugee Convention. And you can see, here's kind of the definition. I won't read it to you, you can read it yourself. But a couple things are important to note here. We can all see the 5 protected grounds. But it's interesting here, it's a migrants that are seeking entry from a third country who are able to demonstrate fear of persecution or actually have reason to fear persecution or have been persecuted. Interesting, that third country is really the important right here. The United Nations estimates there's 120 million displaced people in the world right now. Those are not all refugees. If you can take the situation that's going over in Gaza right now, there are millions of people displaced, but they're not refugees because they're still in the area that they live at. A refugee has been displaced from their country, and the goal is, of course, always to get back to your country. But if that's not possible, then that refugee process starts. And what that goes with is the pre-arrival process. So once you're in a third country, you register with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. That's step number 1. After they go through that, the UNHCR gathers background information, puts it into the US or whatever other country is resettling. As a side note, America resettles more refugees than any other country, although not collectively. Sometimes we say, America has more than this than the top 10 countries combined. We don't, we resettle, at the peak of resettlement, we did about 250,000. During the Trump administration, we were doing about 50,000 a year. Right now, we're about 120,000, if that's growing. So we're back on the upswing and getting more and more in. But at the 120 million people that are displaced in the world right now, US is selling about 120,000 this year, or last year. It's growing up in this year too, looking for more and more. So once they've gone through, they submit the background, submit the information to the US, then the US works with the Resettlement Support Center. So these are NGOs overseas that then work with those refugees through the federal government and say they do all sorts of different things. They do background checks. There's usually 5 or 6, depending on where they're coming from, in-depth interviews. Once that's all done and approved into it, they go through a whole medical background process, which is complete bioscans. I mean, we know everything about them. When that's all gone through, they go through probably 1 or 2 more interviews and a little more background check. So it's a very intense, very long process. It's usually a 2 to 3 year process. So we deal with the resettlement agent, or we deal with resettlement once it's gone through the process. Once it's through all that and everything's approved, then the US government approves it, and the US government works with 10 agencies in the US to then funnel those refugees into local communities and local areas. The International Institute, our parent company is called USCRI. As I say, there's 10 different ones. So USCRI, the government says, we have these refugees coming in. USCRI says, we'll put some of the institute in St. Louis, and these people are going to Joplin, these people are going to Springfield. So that's kind of how the process works. It starts individually overseas and then ends up as a big arc back here in the US and our local community. The other things they do, there's a couple of the small things that go in there, cultural orientation classes and things of that nature, just to sort of help you, although classes overseas never really are as good as just being here, we could say. So once we all get that done, then we talk about resettlement. And so what resettlement is, in big broad terms, I'm gonna sort of, this is a very broad and unnuanced sort of thing, but what the International Institute does is we have 2 big sectors. We have a resettlement sector and a workforce sector. So resettlement includes housing. That's one of the things that I've sort of taken over in the last 8 to 12 weeks is to take over housing. Because we've grown so much, we need a little bit more structure. But housing includes finding adequate housing for the people. We get a list of who's coming in, ages, and all that. So we have to have the right amount of rooms. We have to look for things like do they need a wheelchair access, all that type of stuff. So we find appropriate housing that is also affordable housing in good area. And then when they arrive, we have a complete house set up for them. We have a list of, here's all the household needs that here's all the household things they need, here's all the beds that they need, here's everything that we have. We have a whole process for ordering, and when they come in, they have a house that's completely set up for them. Our resettlement services are, we have case managers that work individually. They have families that are assigned a case. They do public transportation training, social services, social security cards, school registration. I don't read all that to you. You can see the type of stuff that resettlement does, just as you would expect, resettling back in all the bureaucratic things. That's what resettlement agent, that's what our caseworkers deal with. Workforce deals with two big things. They deal with not only finding jobs, a lot of people that don't speak language is a bit of an issue. So what they do is our workforce does job training and job search, but they do ESL classes, English as a second. So we have a tutoring program through Burlington that we do, but we're picking up our own. Our facilities are growing enough that we're trying to really do a lot of stuff in-house and have volunteer recruitment in for that type of thing. And then we just hired a microfinance person in, and then translation and interpretation. That's another big thing that they do. So what a lot of community support groups do is that they take care of a lot of this. So you deal with that, as Lois said, you know, you arrive at the airport, when they land in, there's something that's that really moves you when you see a family of 8 walk off of a plane and all of them have one bag, and that's all that they have to take in, and they're going to their house. And at that point, you think, thank goodness we have prepared a place for them. We have a hot meal. That's one of the things that we do when they get off that plane, tired after traveling around the world and get off. We transport them in, we settle them in, we give them a hot meal. So it's that human kindness coupled with that practicality of what can we do to get them integrated in. And we'll talk a little more in depth on this, but community sponsorship groups are the best way to integrate in the quickest way to integrate people that are coming from this situation into a new home and a new life in the US. You may or may not be aware of this, but we have a big media in America, and it stretches around the world, and people may have some misconceptions about America through our media. It is not all guns and cars, although maybe not all in Springfield. Yeah. So resettlement services, that's what a lot of the burden, that's a lot of the one-on-one stuff, that's a lot of the individual person-to-person help that community support groups help with. And then locally, that's a big thing too, you know, local area, we are a little bit limited in what we can do locally. We don't really resettle in Dixon or Republic because we don't have transportation. Springfield, of course, has a public transportation a bus transit system, but it's certainly not the best in the world. I live kind of on the south side. I have tried probably 4 or 5 different ways to get to the offices, which is the Cox Tower here, next to the AG building. It takes me 20, I can't shave off any time. It's like 20 minutes no matter which way I go. I've tried 65, I've tried Glenstone, I've tried Fremont, I've tried them all. 20 minutes, it's just, that's the way it is. The bus system takes me an hour and 20 minutes. I've got a 10-minute walk, an hour bus ride, and then another 10-minute walk. So we're really limited locally on a couple of things. Where they have bus services, and those bus services are how closely are they located to kind of the institute, because we have a lot of language classes and services that they need there. But then also, where did the workforce go? There's only so many places you can go. We're somewhat limited if you don't have language skills. We have a I believe it's an Afghani family that just came in, and we have a woman there that was the director of a whole pediatric wing at a hospital. Doesn't speak English, so you know we're looking at basic jobs of house thing and maid type thing, just to get the foot in the door, so that then we can get the language skills into. Once the language skills get into, then we can start to see it move. So a lot of times it takes a lot of movement to get these things going. But once this much effort makes this much impact, and that's one of the really neat things about this community is so many of them come in and they want to succeed. They recognize this is the chance. When we talk about the American dream, they know that that's what that American dream is, and this is the chance. So having collaboration with people that can help navigate those cultural missteps, like Lois was saying, you know, junk mail, we all know junk. We have people going, I got a $20,000 check. Well, you didn't though, exactly. And I know, I love me some editing man, the Publishers Clearinghouse is not where you need to be today. So, you know, doing this local thing is a very, very important thing. We are local, we deal with local communities, the people in here. And that's, again, kind of coming back to me. I've been in this community for 30 years. This is my home. Having this impact, helping shape that is a huge, huge boon for me and for my family. So Springfield, like I said, Springfield, a lot of times it's affordable housing as well. A lot of community support groups help with that. We are somewhat limited. We deal with a dozen different landlords, and we're always looking for more landlords. So I'm always looking for people that are open-minded to want to say, hey, will you help with refugees? Because there are cultural problems you have to sort through. You have to figure that out. But it enriches you a lot more. My wife and I lived in West Africa for a couple of years back in the early 2000s. And, when we went there, we had, in America, we say, there's more than one way to cook an egg, right? But they told us, be careful, because when you go over there, you say, well, it's one way to cook an egg. Like, nope, we've cooked this egg the same way for 1,000 years. And so getting in there and building that trust to say, here's a different way. That's what diversity does for us. That's what refugees do. It gives you a different way of looking at things. If you're introspective and you're thinking and if you're looking to enrich your humanity, giving another culture and looking at that and examining how those values compare to yours, there's almost nothing that's better than that to do that. It's like this, someone that's lived a completely different life from you, building that relationship, that introspection will give you greater clarity to your own humanity, in my opinion. So a little rundown here. Since 2013, over 850 people have been resettled, 15 refugee populations. Although again, this is a little bit outdated too. These last couple of months, we're probably about 20 different refugee populations. And the staff has increased from 2 to 15. Again, just this last couple of weeks, that's bounced up. I put this slide on here for a reason. As I said, when I started at the Institute in April of 2023, so I've been there for about 14 months. When I got hired on, I was hire number 6. We're at 24 today with 4 new hires that came in. So our expansion has been absolutely insane. It's been huge. That of the 850 people we settled, we've been around for 11 years. First 3 years, we came to support. There's the Chin community here. We came solely as a support institution to help them. After those first 3 years, we started resettling. Last year, we did 150. That was our biggest year ever. This year, we've already done 250. We're looking at doing 400 this year. And next year, we're shooting maybe 500 to 600. We're sort of seeing just how the capacity goes. So you can see how this need is immense for us. And having a community support group that helps one family it's a literal life-changing sort of thing. It changes your life and it changes their life. It gives them such a better leg up to be able to integrate into society and become the American, that great melting pot. I know that's a bit of that's a part of our American mythos, right? The great American melting pot, the Statue of Liberty. And while we don't always live up to those ideals, that's definitely, I think, what a lot of us believe. And I do believe that if you're sitting here, you probably, something tugged at you. You can volunteer for anything you want to. You can be a part of anything you want to. We have every opportunity. But sitting here, something said, refugees, I'm gonna go check that out. I'm gonna take a look and see what that appeals to me. So whatever tugged at your heart there, if you hear it resonate, this is the place. This is where you have so much impact on people's lives immediately. You'll build relationships with people that you'll never forget and will enrich your lives and make their lives bigger and better. So there you go. The International Institute of Southwest Missouri is a nonprofit that resettles refugees locally. That's the crux of what we do, and that hopefully gives you kind of a big, broad idea of where we're at and who we are. Anybody have any questions? I know I talk fast, but I'm too old to change. I really apologize. I tried.
Before, let me just jump in real quick. What does it look like for families that don't have a community sponsorship group? What does that mean to them? What kinds of things are they navigating without any local support?
So a slowdown of services for one. So they deal with the caseworker. And again, a lot of the services that the community support groups deal with is that one-on-one issue. Hey, we have a problem with, what's a great example? My refrigerator, or here's a good one, my air conditioner wasn't working. So so they get a hold of the caseworker says, I can't come and talk to housing. Housing says, okay, well, we've got to set up this time. We can be out there tonight at 8 o'clock. So I've got resources to go out. You got to put the arrow down to get the thermostat down, or set on heat and not cold. These things that we just absolutely take for granted, overlook because it's part of the fabric of our life. These small things that happen. That's a situation that actually happened the other day. So when that happens, if someone says, hey, the community support group, they have a contact in, they go, oh, wait. I'm right over by their house. Community, of course, contact someone. They say, I'm right by their house. I just pop over and say hi. Check it out. Easy fix. So it speeds up services because you have a group of 8 or 10 people rather than working with a single caseworker and maybe a little bit of support staff on the inside too. Again, we're hiring more caseworkers, but that is also a new thing to have people that are coming in and learning. So it just takes a while to get in and learn all the bureaucratic red tape that goes along with such a thing, and learning all the steps that need to be done and all that. So it's a much quicker, much better way for them to integrate into our community and to have that support firsthand.
So real quick, and let me also sort of interject too, the kinds of things, just with the Afghan family, not even going back to 2017, but just with our Afghan family in the last, from fall of 21 to now. I just jotted down a few things. It could probably be 10 times this long, but a a tree fell on their house one night, so the roof is open to the sky. Doctor appointments, dentist appointments, all of our kids had to have actually oral surgery. All three of the four boys had to have oral surgery, back and forth to mom and baby appointments, dealing with the school, dropping kids off, picking them up, being an emergency contact. Our mom had never had any education, not from kindergarten on, did not know how to read or write in her own language, let alone English. So that's a whole, teaching English to the mom, and really helping a lot of the Afghan women have had to just grow in their confidence about being out in public,
Yes.
being in this world, we dealt with a miscarriage a couple of years ago. I mean, very personal, involved at the hospital. I mean, I could really tell quite a dramatic story there. Childbirth, and the joy of childbirth this year. Jobs, lots of different kinds of jobs, helping with resumes, cars. We were able to get our family a car. And then from that, they were able to get a better job and then get another car, and now a different kind of job. Home repairs. We were able to get a grant and have OCAT come and put an entire new HVAC system in, and lots of other kinds of repairs. Getting a lawnmower, helping with mowing the lawn, what to do when things get stolen from their house, cultural events. Just, the first year they were here, and it was a few days before the 4th of July, and I wasn't thinking much about anything. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is their first 4th of July. We've got to take them downtown to the, all of a sudden it became this mission to get them to the parade. And those kinds of things, they will never forget those first moments. I've even talked to the boys and said things like, do you remember when we met you at the airport? And they were like, you had balloons. Like that's what they remember about. I'm getting chills just thinking of it. But just I could take that short little list and go on and on and on. And it's just an amazing thing to be involved in somebody's life and it's not always, white savior, run in, save the day. It's a partnership. It's a beautiful learning together and a friendship, and learning what to do just as much as what not to do, what to say as much as what not to say. Having them over to our home, having our team and the family to our home. The boys were in the backyard. I had bins we don't have a pool, but I had filled all these bins with water, and they were just having a blast. And so I don't know, is there anything I'm missing? I mean, there's just so many things that we've, Doug had.
Yeah, you should take a whole night.
Yeah, I could take a whole night. Just like Doug has set up dozens and dozens of people with computers that Evangel donated that were a little old, but that he just works his magic on. And all of a sudden, all these families across Springfield have new computers.
New use ones.
New use ones, new to them, but helping them get affordable, the affordable connectivity program for cell phones and for internet. And
That's over.
yeah, that particular program is over. But we've gone through that whole process, and a lot of these Congolese guys call him Papa. I mean, he's not that much older than they are, but
That's what they call me.
yeah, Papa Mark. And we had a family for dinner. Was it last night or 2 nights ago? They originally came from South Africa, but it was because they were at our house and we had time to talk that I realized, they were in Burundi. They were refugees from Burundi to South Africa, and how difficult it was in South Africa. You'd think, what a great place to be a refugee, but no, it was very, very difficult for them there because they were just not accepted, not welcomed, not wanted. And then finally they were able to come here, but their English is amazing because they were in South Africa. So they're both working, the kids are very bright, and they've got a great car. They've, we were talking about houses in the neighborhood and had a wonderful time. So I will try to be quiet now, but I just want you to feel a little bit of all the different kinds of things.
But I think an important point you made there is that it is definitely not like a wide savior sort of thing. Your goal is to go from a mentor and a companion to a friendship. Like that's
Right.
where you want to be. That is the goal. The goal is to say, now here you go. I can still help you. I'm still with you, but you're on your way. And where you see it hugely is the kids. Like that is where you really see the
Oh, yeah.
impact. Those kids down the road, watching those kids 2 or 3 years down the road, they're becoming, like I say, that generation of new Americans that they're just so much get American to understand what it really is to have freedom of choice. And we talk about this freedom of choice, but we have so much individualism in this country. It's one of the, on the scales that they do, our country is so highly ranked for that. To have that idea of you just have the ability to really do whatever you choose to pursue is not a concept that a lot of people have. A lot of countries also, they don't. It's more important to have some stability, which is a stronger government, than it is to have the individual freedom that we cherish so much. So when you see that go, oh my gosh, I have the opportunity, this is something that interests me. I would never have the opportunity. Now I have the opportunity. It's a powerful thing. It reinforces all those ideals that we really kind of hold true and dear to us.
Graduations, weddings,
Yes,
buying homes, buying cars.
all
But
that.
I talk about it with 3 A's, the arrival, the adjustment, and the advancement, because the arrival, there's so many critical, acute things that are involved in arrival. But then there's a whole other phase of adjustment that takes those arrival things to the next level. And then down the road, you're seeing the advancement. So those really, those phases are a really important part of watching the relationship grow.
As far as community support groups, what we typically do is, we, like Lois said, pulls together a group, you all find a way to communicate in, usually Google is the way to go these days for Teams and emails and whatnot. Once that gets put together, we have a training through, it's a Welcoming America program that deals specifically with refugees and with community support groups. You come in with that, and then we do like it's a half a day training, it's about 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours, where it sets expectations, sets everything up, like lays everything out for, here's what you can expect, here's what goes down the pipe from that. And then when, we track hours, and we track a lot of what you're doing so that we get more funding and we get more support services, the more that is done in by the community. So you work with our volunteer coordinator to make sure the hours are being tracked once a month. We try to have all the community support groups meet so everybody can be familiar with each other and talk about what issues or common problems. If there's something that's coming up, hey, what's going on with the legal status with the Afghans that came in before this time? Everybody can talk about that or share the same issues or problems. And so it's a nice group through the International Institute, but it's also a lot of independence that works in as well. Yes.
You mentioned there may be 20 different communities of refugees now.
I would say there's probably 20 different countries and I think 22 different ethnicities.
So I was wondering, I mean, granted, everybody's trying to figure out how to fit in and learn English. Do they, the way you've seen things set up, do they have a way of at least connecting with people that are from maybe the same country, the same part of the world, and supporting each other in that way?
Right, we often do that. So like we have a Rohingya community that James River's taken like 6 or 8 families and they've worked in with that as well. But we have a lot of people. So there's what's called US ties. And a lot of times if you have a family that's here, they will try and bring in, there'll be their US ties and bring in family members or things like that, or people that they're related to. But we absolutely have groups that are together. And a lot of people come in too and say, well, we're heading off to these big metropolitan areas that have a community in, but they get in here to Springfield and go, what a wonderful place. And wow, it's, we fool them, we bring them in the spring, like, oh, it's really nice, the weather here. But it's a really wonderful place. And our standard of living is, or our cost of living is relatively low here. So every refugee comes in with a certain amount of money that they have to sort of get resettled in. And all of them come in debt. They have to pay for their flight in. So all of them come in with a payment that they have to make in and get into it. So with the particular area that we have, the cost of living that's here, a lot of them stay because they really like the place and they really like the people. And then the community support groups that we have all been just fantastic. So that's another way. Bring that in, bring that difference to, bring that variety into it. So yes, there's communities, yes.
You shared that you have 24 staff. About how many volunteers do you have?
It kind of depends on how you want to count it. And so I have volunteers that do, like I've got housing volunteers that do specifically, they just work housing. So I do have some one-off housing. I have one Culture Fest. I usually have a passel of about 25 to 30 volunteers. Although the bigger we get with that, the more we want to grow. We're actually expanding this year and bringing, widening the street up, and putting in. We're just doing a lot more into it. Like this is a big push so that we can have a bigger and better culture fest every year. So I would say of people that are actively, especially if you come out community support groups, I would say a few hundred would be my guess. Although not utilized all the time. It's just throughout the year I probably use a few hundred volunteers at a time. Yeah. Yes.
What languages do your refugee groups speak?
A variety of them. So our big ones are probably Arabic and 2 or 3 different dialects of that. A lot of French speakers because we have a lot of Central African Republic. We've got Rohingya, Chin. Chin's a pretty big one too because there's a big Chin population.
That Papuchin?
No, what's that?
Do they speak Papuchin?
No, it's Burmese, you know, the Burma, so the Rohingyas are the, I don't know how familiar you are with refugee populations, but if you think Burma's kind of squarish and India's over here, the Rohingya are, if you just sort of put it in, they are Muslim and Burma is Christian, or I'm sorry, Buddhist. And so they're sort of ostracized for that. And they look like what we think of like an Indian. And so they've been pushed out. I think it's the biggest refugee camp in the world, 1.4 million people in it right now. And it is in Bangladesh, I believe.
Yeah.
But the Indians don't like them because while they look very similar, they are Muslim and not Hindu. So they're stuck in this weird sort of spot. On the eastern side of the country is the Chin population that look very much more like like an Eastern Asian, setup, but they are Christian. They're not Buddhist. So they're very disparate, but they live in sort of the same country. They live in the same country. So it's a little tricky. So that country is a very wide mix of different ethnicities. So back into your question, there's just a lot of different languages that we have.
Tell me as many as you can remember.
All right, so we got French, we got Swahili, we've got see with the Sudanese. I'd have
Pashto,
Dari,
Dari.
yeah, some of the Arabic ones. Let's see, I'm trying to do like a mental walk around where we have into I said Swahili.
Would Amharic for the Somalis, do they speak Amharic? Like
I have
the
not had that
Ethiopians?
coming through. I don't
Okay.
know. I can probably look it up if you want a more definitive answer. I think there's probably around 15, 16 languages that we have pretty commonly used on there.
Are there many people from Central and South America?
Yeah, so we have some Venezuelans that are coming in. We've actually had a little bit of a run of Venezuelans. We have a couple more coming in the next month. So Spanish, of course, is a big. I think there is a little bit of Portuguese as well. No. Yes.
The Lucando family that attend here or have been coming here, they're our next door neighbors. It's a good way to get involved with refugees. And immediately, the coordinator there said they were worried about them kicking up the yard because they rented a nice house. And so we helped with that. And then we got to know them. So they're just wonderful people, but they speak French and very, very little English, but they just love it. If you come up and even say bonjour, which is about the extent of my French. And anyway,
It's like if you.
yes.
But
That's about
yeah,
it. And then I'm trying, Lois, to learn how to do my Google Translator. I'm just computer.
Kevin's good at it.
yeah.
I'm illiterate with technology, so I'm working on it. And Kevin, the father, is good with it. So I go over there and says something and then I say something back. It's very, very frustrating, I have to say.
Oh, I'm sure.
We haven't had them over to dinner because I'm like, what would we say? We can't speak French. We'll be sitting there quiet. It's even a little awkward. We bring them to church or help bring them to church. And it's a little even awkward on the ride because speak French, but they're so grateful and it's the kindest, sweetest people. So one thing we do need here at Solid Rock is more people to volunteer to drive them to church. There's 6 family members, 4 boys, a little girl, and the parents. So, and occasionally the sister or brother of the woman. So most of us don't have a car if it's 6. So it usually takes 2 cars if you can take 3 people. And we live in North Springfield, under Fremont. So if you live in that general area and are available, please let me know. Put you on our list. And we're trying to alternate, so nobody has to do it every week that the Longs have. And anyway, that's great. And they're very grateful. And I check with them every week to make sure they want to go, and they usually do. And that was one thing I met when I first met with them and mentioned church. Kevin was like, yes, we want to go to church. I thought, what are they gonna do here? I gotta be bored to tears, sitting here with this long service that is not in their language, but they want to.
Oh,
But they don't have a watch, they're like,
Yeah, they're thrilled to be here, both of them, so.
well, I've got a foreign exchange student coming in next year, with my staying in my, or this year coming in staying with my family, and, the excitement that I'm having of, let me show you all the fun stuff that we do, because my family moves, we do a lot of stuff, like and I was like, I can't wait to take you to this, I can't wait to take you to this, I can't wait to show you this, because that enthusiasm, that curiosity is in everybody, like they want to come and they want to have this change, they want to have this success, so this curiosity you will see just run throughout families, and it's exciting. It's exciting for you to show this. It's exciting for them to share, even if they don't like saying if the language is not the same, but they can understand. Yes.
I would say too, the leaning into the awkwardness, it's okay that it's awkward, it's okay that, even if you sit in silence, I remember going to birthday parties and either we let the kids play and the adults just sit, or we like point at things and I'll say, I like your dress and then have them say it in their language and then I say it in English. But, and I've told this story before, but one of my first outings I ever had to take a group, we went to Jordan Valley Park, the fountains, and we had a bunch of the kids and the adults had been there about a week. And I was getting my kids, who were smaller at the time, ready, and I looked and all the group was getting naked. It didn't matter the language barrier, we were able to communicate back and forth that, we can't go swimming naked. And it was like adults and kids, and for them, like, they only had a few outfits, and so they didn't want to get it wet. And what we communicated, we didn't know our language, that we didn't do that. And then the community group was like, okay, we need to buy 12 bathing suits.
Shame is in every language.
Yeah.
Universal.
But I mean, also, like, there was also a family that, like, it seems different that if the families grow up in the refugee camps that are like in huts or dirt floors, are different than the families that grow up in city refugees. I remember we had a group that had lived in the huts, and we were having issues where, like, they would spill something and then leave it on the floor, and so we had teams that would go and just help them clean and just give grace and be like, here, this is. But I remember, I mean, my boys are older now, but they were like 9 or 10, and I would go in, and a lot of the Congolese women, they'd either be nursing or it'd be hot, and they'd be, they didn't have clothes on. So I'm like, girl, just look at the eyes, look at the eyes. And like, it was awkward, but it was like, it's gonna be okay.
Sure.
And then they figured it out, and then they, they would get dressed when we came, but
You really have to just give up your assumptions
Sure.
and your expectations.
And you're embarrassed, you give up your embarrassment.
Yeah.
I was counting with our office of 24, I think we have 13 or 14 that are not American. So the majority of our office are not American born. So there's different names we have to deal with, there's languages. I mean, the times I have to say, I'm sorry, I still didn't understand you. It's embarrassing. You want to understand. You don't want someone else to feel embarrassed. So, but working with this group of people that I have, not that I have, this wonderful group of people, and they're all nationalities. We have 10 different nationalities. We all get along, and we all are very cognizant of, I was talking to my wife, I was like, we're bringing some food for food day, and she's like, well, what do you want to bring? I'm like, well, I have to be careful what I bring. I'm like, I think it's the wrong food, I want to make sure that our Muslim friends can eat it. It's like, we never think about that. Well, of course, we're in a very insular thing, but we always think about that. We're thinking about each other, and that embarrassment and that frustration. The frustration can stick around for a bit, but it comes a lot easier. But that embarrassment of not understanding, or that struggle of, like you say, lean into it, and it's going to be okay, and you get through that, and then it's nothing at all. It's nothing at all, and it's actually. Then that's where that's surprising, like, oh, is that the way? I never considered thinking of something that way. I need to think about that on my own side there. So that's where you get that cultural enrichment.
So like if you're working with a group, do you kind of give them a heads up on the list of things that they do and don't eat or whatever? I mean,
Absolutely,
just
yeah.
kind of,
Totally, yes.
to
And-
learn all those things.
Right, and it's, something more than like, with, like if you had a very devout Jewish person, you're just avoiding a few foods in there, same sort of way, we tend to stick to vegetarianism a lot of times, because it's just the easiest way to go, but you certainly don't have to. Like I said, my wife and I lived in West Africa, and we had a wonderful meal called mafe. That was rice and a peanut butter sauce and this lamb. And so I was like, to go find lamb, I have to go find lamb that's halal, not for, killed the right way. And went to the Asian market, never been to the Asian market, like, hey guys, where's the field? So it's that embarrassment still, I've never been to a new place. That's me stepping out of my box. It makes me feel better, it makes me, or enriches me. But yeah, it's not terribly difficult. It's just a few things that you want to watch. And yes, we absolutely say with the family you're coming in with, make sure that you're watching out for these particular things. Yes.
How many people are in a community support group? Like, how many people does it take per family since
It's usually 8 to 12. That's kind of the sweet spot, but it can be more than that, and it can be, like I say, I think Lois was saying, sometimes it's just, I want to be part of it, but I can only do this little thing. Like, I know for my life, I'm busy enough that if I were in that, I'm like, I'm wanting to help, you call me as your backup. Like, if you need something and you're down to it, always call me. I will move it if I can do it. Like, I will be a backup kind of guy, but we want that consistency. I do a cold weather shelter during the winter time, and I know our volunteers, the coordinator is always like, people are like, well, you just call me if you need me. Well, that's a terrible way. I say Tuesday nights, like every night for the last 3 years, like Tuesday nights are my night. I'll do overnights on Tuesdays. If you need me for another, I'll try to do my best in that. So being able to commit to say, here's what I can do. But even if it comes down to, listen, if you're down to the pinch, let me know. But what that consistency, that's how you build the relationships with the family. That's how you really make progress. That's how that cultural orientation and integration really comes about the best.
So in our other group, the community sponsorship group, we started out with about 15. But it's also a mix of older people that are retired that aren't going to be hauling couches around, right?
Did it anyway.
We did it anyways, yes. But out of those 15, each community sponsorship group has a leader, or, in our case, Julie really is going to be the leader of a group we have here, but I'm happy to do like communication and organization part of it. So we're sort of partnering together on that. For our group, we set up a Google Doc so that everybody, we don't have to send out a million, you're not getting bing, 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 bing all day on group texts and things like that. The information is there. We did try several different ways of communicating to see what would be best. Not everybody was on Facebook, so Messenger didn't work. Not everybody really knew how to text. Well, so that didn't work. I tried another app that was specifically, we did end up with sort of a reply all email kind of thing, which is a little more manageable because, you don't always have to be on your email. It's not like you're getting a text and you're gonna, answer. It also kind of helped to sort of, it was what most of the group felt comfortable with. Some people didn't know how to reply all to the latest thread. So, you have to go back and like find things in, but that was part of what I did. So, but those emails, they were intense during intense times, but other times it'd be like maybe one a week. Like lately, we've had maybe one every 2 weeks because the family has gotten so independent. So, but when the baby was being born and, or the kid's in the hospital or the tree fell on the roof or just whatever, it gets a little more involved. However,
Refrigerator breaks, there's no heat in this house.
Yeah.
Et
So,
cetera, et cetera.
so the Google Doc helped that everybody could kind of go to the hub and I keep a schedule of, each day and what was happening or what a need that comes up. If a need comes up, then I would send the email to everybody, see who can, and tell them, if you can do this, go to the Google Doc and put your name on it. So you don't have a million replies and stuff. So I really tried to minimize that because we're all so busy. And, the last thing you want to do is overwhelm volunteers because you want to make it very doable. Okay. So that's what I really focus on with our group, was to just make it as doable as possible, which also meant that some people, we've got, like Mark and Linda Hosfeld, they are a great part of our group, even though they rarely are able to be hands-on, but they are this vast wealth of information because they've worked in the Muslim world. They know all this stuff. And so a lot of times we'll be going or they'll jump in and, oh, by the way, did you know that? What is Eid? So another lady, all she really could do was do haircuts for the boys. Somebody else well, Doug is mostly the tech guy. And then you had sort of, out of those 15, you had about 4 or 5 that are sort of, they're gonna be there on that weekly, take the kids to school thing. So it really is good to have a good sized group to start. That 12, I would say on the 12 side of it, if you can, because people get busy, they get sick, they whatever. And but being able to just do what you can and work in your area, like we might get a family that has teenagers, or we might get a family that has kids. So, you know, if you have little kids, you love being with little kids, you've got little kids that would love playing with those little kids, then, you know, that's a great connection. And you might, you know, have, you know, you might want to help somebody mow their lawn or show them how, or help them get a lawnmower or so on. So there are so many different ways that you can, but it's sort of a matter of just getting to know the family and what the needs are, what the opportunities are too, not just needs, but just like what can happen here? How can we all grow together and help them get settled and feel comfortable? And you know, somebody else in our group was she worked for the tooth truck. So she had all the ins and outs of the dental stuff and of the school and connection with the school. So it's just a kind of a fun way to see who's involved in what.
Yes.
I was just gonna say, for kids, language isn't a barrier. Our granddaughters who are 9 and 6 play with the 9 and 12-year-old next door, and they don't have any problems. Actually, my granddaughter's kind of a bully. She bosses them around like they can understand her. She just speaks louder, but they don't seem to mind. I mean, they get along great. And anyway, and they're learning a little bit of French. And we sat down with Grace, the younger boy, and had him teach the girls colors. And then they made sure he knew how to say it in English. That was fun.
Yes.
And you know, as if anybody that's learned a language, of course, that immersion is how one of the quickest ways to learn it. Obviously, we've all heard that. But if you're using it every day, you're saying it every day with kids, they're so quick on it. Again, you see it's so much of an impact, especially with the kids. But there's nothing gratifying. My son turned 16 this last month, and so I'm in that mode of fatherly teaching all the things, right? So I was gone last week and I sent him off. I said, we've got a couple of families that need to get their lawn mowed. So go get the lawn mowed for them. I take our lawnmower. And so he went out and did some mowing. And then as he was coming back, he was in my car. And because I was not there to help him in, I said, I would have normally said, son, something with wheels in the back of the car, you're going to lay on its side so it doesn't roll around as you turn corners. I was not there to help him. So when he took off, it rolled back and shattered my back window.
no.
Like, it's a very important lesson. It's a very expensive lesson, but we learned that lesson. But it's that little stuff right there. There's little things that you go, oh, hey, this is something you haven't encountered in with. Think of this. I mean, it could save you $1,100. I don't know. There's all kinds of things. It could save real much stuff there. But you know, I mean, I told him, I said, you know, son, that's. I can't blame you. It's something you normally just think of. He's 16. He's rarely driven around or anything like that. He'll never forget now. Wish it'd been a cheaper lesson, but it was still a good lesson. But those little things and that thing that we just take for granted in because it's just so part of our life, it makes such a vast impact.
I also want to say too that the Institute used to not have the community sponsorship groups. It was kind of an experiment in the fall of 21 when all the Afghans came. You know, they like came so quickly. A lot of families sort of trickle in because they've been trying to get vetted for years and years and years. The Afghans were like, flee the country, come to the United States, thousands of them all at once. So it was really a rush to figure it out. And it was a learning process for everybody, for the Institute and for the volunteers. And Rebecca's just been great. You know, she's been patient with us and we've been patient. I mean, I don't think I needed much patience, but some of the other community sponsorship leaders that weren't used to the sort of ambiguity of working with refugees were like, well, they went to that other house for the whole weekend and they didn't even take a diaper bag. And I'm like, well, that's all right. You know, they're with their friends and they're the guest of their friends and their friends will have diapers. It's okay, you know. But I mean, in America, you got a baby, you don't go anywhere without your diaper bag. So little things like that just, you know, kind of take a deep breath. It's okay. And it's just such a joy. And I would just add too, since we're sitting here as a church, it's we welcome some refugees that become a part of all of our churches in Springfield, and they participate, they come to know the Lord, they grow in the Lord. Some are at Central. The family we had for dinner last night, they're at Central, and then they go to the Swahili service after. I mean, they are in church all day on Sunday. Others, Muslim families, they will probably, well, we did have the Muslim family at our church for a dinner, a celebration, and we used to have a Saudi English group at the church, but they're not, it's an unconditional friendship. It's not like, oh, I will be friends with you until you say the sinner's prayer kind of thing, it's not about that. You're just showing the love of Jesus and being
That's right.
who you are as a believer, regardless of how things turn out, and that's exciting too.
Love your fellow man, I think that was one of the core tenets right there, and that is really everything right there, just an unconditional love. I mean,
Yes.
you see it in us, and we're all made with that same spark, we're all made with that same thing that God put in all of us, so. Yeah, it just resonates in.
Didn't realize it until, our neighbors came, but there are at least 22 verses about welcoming the stranger in the Bible. And we need to embrace them.
Yes.
One thing I've noticed, it's great that there is an organization that we can refer refugees to when there's a problem. I had a problem trying to help them get their cell phone taken care of. I said, okay, well, they bought burner phones and they paid at Walmart for so much. And it's great, just type in 611 and then it speaks to you in English. And it's like, oh, these guys, they don't know what's going on. So finally, I was somebody use Google Translate, say, you check with their office and they'll help you out, because it said usually you would get a contract and make monthly payments. And they went, oh, so, but after doing that, I thought, gee, I really feel like I've made an impact in someone's life.
I think the last time my wife had to do something with AT&T, it was something with our bill, it was a good 10 hours on there. And so we're like, yeah, I had that conversation with them too. I remember that weekend. That was terrible. But that's, I think of how hard that is to navigate. Even just you were saying with the driving, we think driving, what's driving? Getting a car, taking a test, all the basics, maybe language skills. But we don't talk about insurance. How do you navigate insurance if you don't speak English very well? What if you get pulled over? What happens? Like, what do you do if you don't speak English at all and get pulled over in Southwest Missouri? Like, what do you do with that? I mean, the things that. What about this aspect? What about this aspect that we don't even consider, don't even think about? Can be a huge burden. It can be a huge obstacle, which is why the community support groups just help that so much.
I'd say too, that friendship, if it's okay if I share two stories. We had a refugee who they were walking along National, and one of the kids got hit by a car, broke her leg, and it was all this like doctor's appointments and down and off Evans Road, and we had to take her to appointments. And while she was in the hospital, I had come a couple of times and I noticed the nurses were being really hostile toward the mom. And I wasn't sure I could like discern it. And so I just went and talked to them and said, everything okay? And they're like, we're thinking about, we think we might need to call. I think she's abusing her child. And she doesn't care about her child. And I knew the mom. I was like, no, she loves her child. And they're like, she doesn't even care. Her daughter will cry and they'll come in and they're really cuddly. And so I remember calling Rebecca and being like, they're really concerned, what's going on. And so she was like, you have to explain to them that they've come from a culture where you cannot coddle your children. You cannot baby them. And this particular family, she was like 2 when she went to the refugee camp. So she became a mom in the refugee camp and then came to America. And so for her, it was like, yeah, my daughter's crying. Yeah, life is hard. Yeah, she has to deal with it. And there wasn't this cuddling. And it was something like we were able to talk through it, and to see it even on the nurses' faces of like, oh, I didn't know they were refugees. I'm like, you didn't pick up that they weren't speaking it. Like, it was just having someone to advocate. That was a big deal. And I remember there was another family, they were having some problems because they kept this rope around their baby's belly, and the doctor wanted to take it off. And she was really upset. And we're at the doctor's appointment, and she's like, they're like, you can't keep a rope. This is dangerous. And for her, that's how they could tell if the baby was growing. So in her culture, they knew their baby was healthy once the rope got tight. So it was like, this is something, they keep them on their wrist or they keep them around the ribs sometimes. And it was like, once you learn the culture, you can convey that of like, you know, the refugees, we're figuring this out, they're learning. And then our other story, we had a community group, sometimes we had one of the older aunts. There was like a family had been resettled and she had her purse in her nightgown, but she came out to take her trash out and the door locked behind her and she was taking care of some of the little kids and a 7-month-old baby. And she like called, she had her phone, so she texted her family, and they came and they didn't know what to do, so our family came. And I'm like, you have to call the police, and these women started crying, like, don't call the police, don't call the police. And I was like, no, it'll be okay, and the police came and they were so gentle and they were so kind. But then one of the women were sharing with us that she had come, like, she had lost count how many times. For her, it was Rwandan soldiers who had raped her. Like, and she shared how many times she had been abused. So for them, the police were so upsetting. And the police officer was perfect. He could not have been more gentle. But he couldn't, he said his only option was to ram the door. And we're like, oh no, we're gonna have to buy that door. So I was like, those are another options. We called a locksmith. And really, it was a very racist locksmith who came, who wanted proof that it was their house. And I was like, no, she's in her pajamas. There's a 7-month-old baby. And so for me, I had to go Karen on. I was like, call your manager. I will talk to them. And, you know, I was like, we need to get this guy to unlock this door, because he was like, well, how do I know they're not trying to break in? I'm like, these are women in their 50s and 60s.
Their nightgowns.
Not that 50s and 60s can't break laws, but.
Then you get up early, so it's definitely at night.
Never be that bold to be like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, and so once you get to know the families, they know you can call and you just, and it's bizarre, you know, it's like, this is weird, but.
You're an advocate. You turn into an
Yeah,
advocate for them.
yeah.
You're an advocate on the ground, speaking the language in the community. It's a powerful thing.
These folks are as smart as we are. Many of them are doctors, lawyers. They have just lost everything. We shouldn't think of ourselves more than we are, and it will keep our relations fair and even. I have a friend who is a veterinarian, a large animal vet. And of course, they get no respect here, but they're still smart enough to learn all of that, smart enough to have a job doing that for 20 years. But they're not respected here because they're new and they don't speak the same language the same way that others do. They don't have the same qualifications that veterinarians do in the United States, so they can't get jobs as veterinarians, even though they're perfectly capable. So for our caution for us, do not look at these people as if they're somehow inferior to us or to our culture or to any of this. They have different culture, and they are perfectly capable of managing their lives. They had enough smarts to get over here.
Tough as nails. I mean, right?
Yeah.
3 years of a process, living in a refugee camp.
10 years for some of the folks, 10, 15 years,
The
right?
process being 2 or 3 years, like.
Right.
It's being able to stick through that, you know, as an associate's degree. I mean, that's a lot of work and consistency to get to it. Tough people, strong people, different backgrounds.
That's right.
Just
Some of them are very, very, very smart, and they're all capable and they work hard, and you know, percentage wise, they commit far less crime than the natural born citizens. Statistics are all out there. You can look at them anytime you want, CDC and you know, UN and et cetera. They've got all those statistics. These are decent people. Any investment we make in their lives, as their friends, as assistants, as filling out forms, whatever it takes, it will be gratefully received, and they will use it to the best of their ability.
Impacts tenfold.
I have another question. 'Cause obviously we're talking about community support groups as the primary vehicle that you use, are there other, like, you talked about English classes, are there weekly things at the institute that you guys do that?
There are.
Should also volunteer?
Absolutely, you can, absolutely. So we do have, on Tuesdays, we've started a job search class and resume building class. It's a couple hours that I'm looking for people to volunteer in for that. We've got an English as a second language program through a company, or through a program called Burlington. I know we're looking to do some of that in-house. My workforce manager, Jake, could give more information on that. I have a couple of housing volunteers that do, that's kind of a short term, like, hey, in fact, I called one day, hey, apparently one of the houses opened up that we're gonna move into, everything came together. Can you help me this afternoon? Can't do it this afternoon. Okay, we'll have a housing person. But there's definitely housing times that I need stuff for, have big projects, inventory type projects, rearranging, moving type things. I mean, there's a variety of one-off things. It's just not so consistent like every time you're doing this. Maybe with housing, but that's not inconsistent on the days that it's at. So that change fluctuates a little bit. But there absolutely is a lot of contact information. I can give you any information on that too.
So I have everybody's email. So what I'll do is email you all with all of the information about the Institute. There are a couple Facebook groups. There's a private one and a public one, and the private one is for volunteers and people, already participating. Public one is sort of for the public. And then I'll ask, if you are interested in community sponsorship group, we'll see how many people we have. And also I'll ask you the kinds of things you're interested in doing, the kinds of things you're not interested in doing, that sort of thing. And then we'll kind of see where we go from there. And then down the road, maybe, what did we say, Nanette and Julie, like late August, early September, to have the community sponsorship group training. And then go from there. I mean, there are families right now that are coming in like every week. So there's, but we want to do this well. We want to plan, and we want to ramp up and be prepared and feel as comfortable as possible. There's also a lot of really great books, if you have time to read, there's a whole collection of books that are really helpful as well. So
and we tend to slow down like in the fourth quarter, because you may notice around December it gets a little crazy sometimes for Americans. So that tends to slow down with the weather and with the holiday season. So October, at the end of October, it starts to taper a little bit into November, and then like that end of November through December, January, February, it's usually pretty light. Ramps back up into March. So if you're looking at that timetable, there should be still plenty of folks coming through that need assistance.
And if we hit a spot where we're ready, but there's not a family, we'll have this whole list of things that we can do. Even tonight, there's donations in the back room that need to get put into Mitch's car and
There's a man. There's always a man.
yeah.
If there's not one, there is one.
Yeah. So, but any other questions? But one more, Heidi?
Mitch, how many families do you think you'll get settled in the second half of 2024 in Springfield?
It's not so much families as it is people, and like we say,
Yeah, but how many houses?
it's not. I don't know, because like for this week, for example, I have 2 people that are individuals coming in, and next week I have a family of 9. So it's hard to say. Like I get a family of 9, 10, 11, but then I might have a family of 2 and 3 coming in, or it might be a family of 2, and then there's 2 and she's pregnant. There's just like I have a whole mix that are coming in right
Can you
now.
give me a range? Because right now I have 2 as the bottom number.
Sure, then let's say, so we've got 250, so we're slated for 4, so let's say 200 divided by, say an average family is 5, another 40 families.
Between now and the end of the year.
That's what I would say. If you want to give just like a general rough estimate, I'd say 40,
I love that reference.
give or take 30. That's a big difference. But that's probably not a bad way. Using 5 as an average. I mean, I have a family of 9. I'm looking to, they just came in, and a family of 11. They're living with other people. Finding a housing for 11 people is not that
It's
you
tough
think.
because there are rules that you have to
That's
follow.
right.
Yeah.
Too hard.
They have to have so many bedrooms, so much space, yeah.
You can't put teenagers of the opposite sexes together. I mean, there's a lot of rules to be having. So, but those are the rules, and they're there for a reason. So, but I think 40 is probably a pretty good estimate. But I would say 5 to 7 is my typical. But again, I had a rush of 1 and 2 people coming in, and then we had a 2 or 3, 9 and 10 people coming in. So I'd say 5 to 7 is pretty good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your
Mitch.
time.
So Julie and I will be in touch with you and please come and take some more food before you go home. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Mitch.
That's neat too.